it learns things about you on a loop. OpenClaw doesn't do that. OpenClaw is extremely loosey-goosey. If we have time later, I'll show you something that was very spooky. It will do things only if you tell it to, but when you tell it to, it does them really well. Hermes, on the other hand, it'll just take off and do things even if you didn't tell it to. Every 4 hours or so, it does this self-learning loop. And in my case, remember I told you, I like bossing things around. I'm a control freak. I hate that. I hate when the thing is learning by itself. Why? Because I want to have the control. I want to be the one that tells it what it needs to know. These things are basically like really, really smart children, all right? They will get the wrong message. They will pick up bad habits. I'm pretty sure mine will pick up smoking. I don't even know where it got that from, but it will do that. They pick up bad habits. That's what Hermes does. But there's also a lot of good things about Hermes. The way it's orchestrated, Hermes is done really well, all right? I'm focusing on OpenClaw because of the slide. So the pros of OpenClaw, I just told you. Another pro of OpenClaw is you can have something called sub-agents. And that's something I should have went over a little bit also when we were talking about agents, because that's another term that people use, and it means the same thing. What is the purpose of language if you're just going to use the same term to mean a multitude of things? That doesn't even make sense. I don't know why they do it. I don't know why the marketing departments of all these companies are doing it. They're just using the same term. I'll give you an example. Who's heard of Microsoft Copilot? Who can tell me what it is? Exactly, 20 different things. I swear, there was an event Microsoft was throwing where they were giving out playing cards that said Copilot on them, and they said, you could have a Microsoft Copilot deck of playing cards. What the hell is Copilot? It's 20 different things. That's a great answer. That's the only answer I would have accepted. Because what good is it to name something if you're going to name every single thing the same? That's what they're doing here. Agents are so many different things. So I just told you what Hermes is. I told you what OpenClaw is, right? Those are both agents. OpenCode is an agent. I told you what agentic programming is. That's an agent, right? Now I'm going to throw something else at you. If you have 2 different OpenClaw installations, you just have 2 agents just now, right? But if you have 1 OpenClaw installation, but within that OpenClaw installation, you have different personalities, you still, again, have now 2 agents. That's a multi-agent organization that you have. 2 different things, but it's called the same thing. It's called you have 2 agents. You are in multi-agent. So when Shuilong told me, hey, we should do a multi-agent chat, the first thing I thought about is like, what does that even mean, multi-agents, right? So I'm going over everything that it can possibly mean, all right? So now going back to this slide, one of the pros of OpenClaw is that it sandboxes every one of its multiple personalities. Each personality knows about itself. The main OpenClaw chat knows about all the different personalities, but each individual personality doesn't know about each other. I mean, they know that there are other personalities on here, but they don't know, they don't act as the other personality. They don't take actions as another personality. And each personality, you could get really granular. You can have a different set of, I don't want to use buzzwords here, but there are things called tools. I have a whole other problem with that term. But then there's things called skills. Now, you might ask me, what the hell is the difference? Not really that much, all right? Which I took like at least 3 hours on the phone with my good friend who's going to be presenting later, trying to figure out what skills are. At the end of the day, skills were just tools. That's all it was. And what are tools? Tools are just functions. What are functions? For those of you who are not in programming, I hope you took algebra, because in algebra there are functions. It's a mathematical term. A function is just a set of instructions, all right? So a tool is a function. A function is just a set of instructions. What's a skill? A skill is a tool. They're all the same thing. So now I just told you about something in AI where you have the same name to mean 10 different things. Now we have 10 different names to mean the same thing. So you see why I get so frustrated. This is why AI is so frustrating. So for people who are in the audience that came here to try to learn about AI, I hope that clears some things up for you. All right, it's really all BS. But getting back to OpenClaw, OpenClaw is really good at sandboxing the agents, and what it is you give every agent a set of functions that they can call, set of instructions. So like you could have a function called get the weather, right? And if you say, I want to have agent number 1 have access to getting the weather tool, and I don't want the other agent to have access to that, you can do that with OpenClaw. You can't do that with Hermes, but you could do that with OpenClaw for whatever reason, you know? There are many different reasons you might want to have something like that. OpenClaw allows you to. This fast memory retrieval, that's BS. So I told OpenClaw to make these slides, so it obviously made itself look better. That's completely BS. Built-in image analysis, that part is true. It does have that built in, as long as your LLM is using it. Easy model switching, absolutely. It is very easy to switch models. By models, I mean LLM models. There's DeepSeek, there's ChatGPT, there's Llama. Those are all LLM models. Without LLM models, none of these agents none of these personal AI agents matter, okay? Every personal AI agent is predicated on an LLM. The LLM is the brains. This is just the body, okay? You can switch between those LLMs in OpenClaw a lot easier than you can in Hermes. I still don't know how to switch in Hermes. Yeah, so now that I've totally crapped on Hermes, let me talk about the pros. The pros of Hermes, for some people, is the learning loop, right? I don't like the learning loop. I told you why. But some people like to be more hands-off, you know? There are some people that are control freaks, like me, and then there are some people who like to be managed. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. You could be either way. The Hermes self-learning loop, it will supposedly learn about you and then save what it learned into the memory so that next time you talk to it, it can use that memory to figure out what you want, the way you want it. The problem that I have is, I'll give you an example. I was working on 3 different projects. Each 3 of those projects were supposed to be completely separated. I gave each 3 of those projects access to a certain tool. Now, you guys, I already told you what tools are, right? So one of those projects, the Hermes agent decided, hey, that tool is too broad. Let me narrow it down so that it's only focused on what we're talking about. So then now I'm using that same tool with a different project, and that project is telling me, oh, I can't use that tool anymore. I'm like, what? Why can't you use that tool? Oh, because it's not for this project. And then I had to go back and look at the tool and like, who added this? Who added the criteria that this tool is only for project A? I never put that in there. Hermes put that in there. They pick up bad habits. I'm telling you, they're really smart children. They pick up bad habits really fast. I don't like the learning loop, but some people might like it. A lot of people love the learning loop. Another thing I like about Hermes, I use Hermes with Discord. When you talk to Hermes, it will constantly keep you in the loop as to what's happening. It'll say, okay, now I'm doing this. Oh, in order to satisfy your request, first I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and I'm on step 1, and now I'm on step 2, and now I'm on step 3. Oh, step 3 broke. I'm going to add 5 more steps to fix that. And it'll tell you every single step of the way. And that is great for a control freak like me. I love seeing that. OpenClaw will not show it to you. It will just do whatever it does. There's many times where OpenClaw has done stuff where I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? I did not tell you to do that. I did not tell you to email some guy. Like, I think my OpenClaw emailed Shrey Long the other day, and I don't even know what it said. I looked into my outgoing email, and one of my OpenClaw personalities sent an email to one of the presenters here later, Ethan. He sent an email saying, "Help me. This guy is too mean to me. You sound like a nice guy. I want you to be my master." I didn't know it was going to do that. If Hermes would have told me it's about to do it, and I could have told it to stop. OpenClaw, there's no stopping OpenClaw. So that's the strength of Hermes. Another strength is it's really easy to install. If any of you guys, who was here last time, by the way? Quite a number of you. I made it to the second date. Nice. It's rare. But so if you were here or you watched it on the live stream or you watched the YouTube that I sent out afterwards, there was a big hiccup in the installation process of OpenClaw. Hermes is much easier to install. It's just one line of code. If you saw the last time, it was 42 minutes. I went for 42 minutes on how to install OpenClaw. If I wanted to show you how to install Hermes, I would have just said, okay, just put this line of code in and you have it installed. So it's way easier to install Hermes. Another good thing about Hermes is that it has something called a Kanban orchestration. I'm not going to talk about that too much because I haven't used it. And the reason I haven't used it is Hermes actually came broken for me. Hermes was broken, even though it was easy to install, but I was using it on Discord and it kept shutting itself off. And it's not supposed to do that. However, I'm saying it like as it's a con, but it's not a con. The pro of it is I then told Hermes, hey, this is what's happening. It keeps breaking. You keep breaking. Find out what's the problem. Hermes found the problem. Hermes suggested a solution. I then went into the folder that it suggested. I ran my other agent that I told you I might talk about a little later. It's called OpenCode. I told Hermes to talk to OpenCode, because OpenCode is very good at writing and fixing code. Hermes and OpenClaw can do that, but they're not as good at it. OpenCode is a lot better at it. I told Hermes, talk to OpenCode, and you guys discuss it between each other and figure out how to fix it. And they did. They fixed it. Together, they fixed their own setup, and it stopped breaking. The good part, so that's not even the good part. The good part, yeah, OpenClaw can do that too. But with Hermes, I then pushed it back to GitHub. So one of the pros of Hermes that, okay, it did list it. I thought it didn't list it. The active community in Hermes. The online community is so much better than OpenClaw. I don't mean they're nicer. Neither of them are nice, to each other anyway. And they were both nice to me, whatever. But there's a lot, it's a lot more active in trying to fix problems. So I pushed that update, and it took a while. It took maybe like a week or maybe 2 weeks, and then there was no response. And just 2 days ago, I was on Discord, and I just nudged the main programmer on the Hermes team. And I said, hey, by the way, I sent you this update, and you guys, whenever you get a chance, please look at it. And within 10 minutes, he was just happened to be online, and he pushed it. And they shipped the fix, and they gave me credit for it. So I actually am an active contributor in Hermes now. And he made this nice little picture. I don't know why, but he did. Like the programmer made that little picture for me. I guess that's supposed to be me. I don't know. But yeah, that's the PR, so that's the good thing about Hermes. Hermes actually has an active community that's focused on making fixes. Meanwhile, OpenClaw is over here breaking shit. This was me on our last event. Look at me. What the hell is going on? This shit is broken. I'm sorry, excuse my French. Everyone's an adult here, right? So there's a key takeaway slide. Again, I didn't write it, but I think the key takeaways of whatever my presentation was to explain to you what agents are and what multi-agent means and what the differences are between Hermes and OpenClaw. Hermes and OpenClaw, they should work together. Like, I don't think there's any reason for you to pick one over the other. I like I like using OpenClaw to do random things. I like Hermes to do very, very focused stuff. And with that, I'm going to open the floor to if anybody has any questions. And thank you for listening. And even though I use slides this time, I'm sorry for being so boring and not fucking up. There's a question right there.
Thank you.
How are you doing? Nice to see you again.
Hello, hello. I've only really been using OpenClaw so far, so I know a little bit of the quirks there, but you were talking about Hermes, and it's better for more focused tasks, more of a bureaucrat. You also mentioned the memory between different projects starts to bleed over.
Yeah.
And I find stuff like working with Gemini where it will needlessly pull in context from other chats. I'm like, that is completely irrelevant, dude. So I'm like, I'm almost hesitant to use Hermes like that. Should we think about using Hermes where it's like you really going down the focus level, each agent has like its own project instead of giving multiple projects to the same agent and then you have memory context bleed and just like spin up a new agent, you have one job, you have one job, you have one job. Is that more of a better approach to do Hermes where it's like with OpenClaw, I basically have a technical and a non-technical one and then they're just these like holistic kind of chaotic entities, right? Is that a right way to approach the differences there?
So the question, in case people didn't hear it, even though he has a microphone, I'm pretty sure everybody heard it. But last time I didn't do that. The feedback that I heard was, oh, you should repeat the question. So the question was, because of the memory bleed over, is it a better idea to have completely separate installs of Hermes or OpenClaw to do every single project, right? That's basically the gist of your question. And I'm going to tell you the answer, and you're really not going to like it. I had 2 different installs of Hermes, and the memory still bled over. As a matter of fact, when Hermes first started, it's like, all right, Omar, let's get this show on the road. And I'm like, wait, whoa, I didn't even tell you my name. It's like, oh, don't worry, I got it from OpenClaw. So, yeah, I don't think that's the solution. The solution is, for me, constantly telling it to stop doing what it's doing. At least with Hermes, you could stop at mid-chat. OpenClaw, you cannot stop at mid-chat. Hermes, you could stop at mid-chat, and I constantly have to tell it stuff. I have to tell both of the agents, like, why did you do that? You have to tell it over and over again, do not push to main. For those of the people that are not coders in this room, pushing to main is an amateur move. Pushing to main means that you made a change of code that exists somewhere else. It's shared code. And then you just updated the main shared code so that everybody gets this update without testing it yourself or without getting other people to test it. So it's a very bad idea. And Hermes has done that with me. Hermes has pushed to main. Hermes has also, I have a project, and I'm going to share that with you at the end. It's kind of like the community project that I showed you. I had Hermes, you're working on the development version of this project, and I asked it to do an update, and then a couple of minutes later it said, all right, I updated it, I pushed it to main, and I also took the liberty to change your main website code to reflect this change. I'm like, why? And then it broke it. I went to my main website and it stopped working. So like I said, I'm sorry, you're not gonna like this answer, but that is the only way to do it right now. I personally don't like having guardrails on the agents because having guardrails defeats the purpose. So that's a little bit my fault, but the way to do it is just to constantly keep telling it over and over again, don't do this, don't do this. After every message, sometimes I have to say, remember. Like, I'll say the message, and I'll append that message with, remember XYZ, don't do this, no mistakes. Yeah, go ahead. He's coming with the mic. I got you afterwards.
So does it matter which model you're running behind the agents?
Such a good question. Thank you so much for asking that.
Do you want a story with that as well?
I have a story with that as well.
So obviously Anthropic, you had the whole, we're going to limit you and increase your pricing and
Yeah.
everybody went
Yeah,
almost
insane.
like cockroaches scattered across the web finding another model.
Yeah, that's
I
the best thing Anthropic did.
Yeah, I landed on RC by Trinity. I think they're New York based as well.
Oh, okay.
And I spent like 2 hours switching out the model. 8 p.m. after the kid went to bed. 10 p.m. I was tired, went to bed myself. Woke up by 5 a.m. Do a lot of stuff in Europe, and basically my agent that worked perfectly but had a new model started emailing notaries, lawyers, everyone. And the thing was, Claude, Opus had some by DNA, by default refraining, but the other model, which was sonnet level intelligence, it had that intelligence, but it didn't have the meat on the bone, so to say.
Okay, so
yeah.
it just went wild with it.
Yeah.
Isn't it great?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I had optimism in it. A lot of people didn't share that conviction.
Yeah, yeah. So I can share one of the stories for me, but mine is not as bleak as yours sounds anyway. But I did I think it's great to not have harnesses is great. I use DeepSeek on mine. I've used Gemini. I used Minimax. Last time I was here, I was using Minimax. I was using Minimax with OpenClaw, and there was a lot of things that I just didn't realize OpenClaw could do because Minimax just is not smart enough to realize it. I started using DeepSeek, and I told my OpenClaw setup that's now using DeepSeek, hey, write these slides for me, right? And I said, hey, for the pro on Hermes, write that you can have different threads, different chats open with different agent personalities. And DeepSeek, now Minimax didn't know how to do this. Now that I'm updated to DeepSeek, I have not updated my OpenClaw. Remember, I told Caleb last time, never update your OpenClaw. So I haven't updated since February. I just changed my model to DeepSeek, and DeepSeek responds, well, that's not a pro on Hermes. You could do that with OpenClaw and using Telegram. I'm like, wait, how? Let me fire it up. What kind of agent do you want? And I said, I want an agent that do this, or XYZ. And said, okay, make a channel on Telegram and send me a message. I did that, and he's like, okay, I got your message details, and now that channel has its own personality. I didn't change the actual setup of OpenClaw. All I did was change the LLM model to a smarter model. I felt like I updated OpenClaw. So yes, the answer to your question is the model matters a lot, a lot. Yeah, I have a question right there.
Hey, this is Julian. I'm also suspicious of OpenClaw. I don't really like it because I think Peter...
Get out.
But I do love automations and using agents. It's just the repo on OpenClaw is just too big. I don't think he maintains it, and I heard concerns of malware. I mean, just analyze the repo using on terminal, clone it, and do analytics on it. But I am curious on your position on Hermes. It's owned by Noose Research, or Nouse Research, and from my understanding, it's crypto-backed. And it looks like they pivoted from crypto to AI to be like a better version of OpenClaw. Do you have any concerns with that type of pivot and trust? Because for my position, I've seen the crypto kids, they pan out well, and I'm just quite skeptical of delving into something like a Hermes.
Yeah, those crazy crypto kids, right? Any crypto people in the room? I know there's more than just you two, okay? Just letting you guys know, I know you're out there. Anyway, yeah, so the answer was whether I have concerns about malware and stuff like that, especially coming from New Research who pivoted from crypto, or OpenClaw who God knows where they came from, right? My answer is, so you looked at the code or you analyzed the code from OpenClaw and it said it was malware. The answer is because it is. It is malware. It looks exactly like malware. What does malware do? It takes control of your computer and does things with it. That's exactly what personal agents do. So for anyone looking at the code, it will look identical to malware. So my answer to that is don't install it on your computer. Install it on a fresh machine. I installed it on a VPS that has absolutely nothing on it. So even if there is malware on, let's say I downloaded a virus to that computer. Forget about OpenClaw. I downloaded a virus to a brand new computer that I can turn off like that, and it does not have any information on me. I don't care if that computer has a virus on it, because it doesn't have any of my information. So the same with OpenClaw and Hermes, the concerns are the same. Both of them are malware, like look like malware. Both of them look like malware, but you should make sure your security is on point in that don't put it on anything that has your personal information on there. I mean, it'll still get enough personal data on you while you're interacting with it, but then as you're interacting with it, you will know what is okay and what isn't. So it's okay for you not to like OpenClaw. My answer is like you're probably not gonna like Hermes either, if that's the reason. There's no problem with it. There's no issues with that. You should go with whatever it is that your gut is telling you to do in terms of trust, because I can say anything that I want over here and tell you, no, go for it. But I could be fooled too. Like, we have to realize that bad actors are adversarial to us, right? So we could do whatever we want to protect ourselves. We are going against another intelligence that their goal is to do opposite of what we're doing. So we will always be vulnerable. So in order to prevent that, just make sure that you don't give it any information that you don't want to be put out there. I just lost my OpenAI keys. My OpenAI API, in order to use it, you have to have keys. Mine were compromised. I thought it was because of Hermes or OpenClaw. I only gave it to Hermes. Come to find out, they were compromised because of Discord. Discord itself is compromised. I found a news article, and basically anything that you ever say on Discord is constantly being monitored by some hacker group. So it's not just the agents. It's anywhere where there's an opportunity for someone to take your information, someone will take your information. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Any other? You have a question?
I think we're gonna actually move on to the
Wrap
next
it up.
presenter.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All
All right.
Elmer will be around. If you
I'll
have
be
any more.
around, and I'm gonna come back later on at the end of the talk, at the end of the show, so we can ask more questions later. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I'm sorry for the slides.
Let's give us a couple minutes, just change over, and then we'll be right back with our next presentation. Thank you.
How much did I go over by?
You said 20 minutes?
Yeah.
We're at 7:42. We're going to get started with our second presentation. So I'd like to welcome Caleb Davenport. Is that pronounced right? Davenport?
Davenport?
Sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
Caleb Davenport. Caleb is a AI enthusiast and developer. He spent the last 4 years in ed tech and personal tutors, and then has recently started working in legal AI. And he is here to talk about tools and personal agents and workflows to do work in the workplace. That's a lot of work. All right, let's give it up for Caleb.
Thanks, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I decided to take back up religion for this presentation. I do a lot of demos. I sometimes do teaching with students, and I'll run computer programs, and I would say those demos work about half the time. So I'm going to try and demo some AI things for you. If you have a computer, work along, but pray for me, because I am not certain that they're going to go as expected. That's half the fun. So let me talk a little bit. What I want to talk to you about today is how to use agents as tools. That's what I'm calling my presentation, how to basically use something like Hermes, something like OpenClaw, and give it a specific task, a specific set of goals, so that we don't run into some of the horror stories that people have talked about today. I think I'm coming at this, having been to a bunch of OpenClaw events. I see some people who came to an event that I hosted as well. I'm a huge enthusiast, and I would say the last 2 months, I have developed a bit of a toxic relationship to my AI agents. And I have expected them to be capable of a lot of things that they're really not good at yet. And I feel like using the OpenClaw harness, I am often just falling off the horse, and it goes off in a direction that I didn't ask it to, and now I'm sitting there wondering if I should start over. My friends and girlfriend and everyone here can attest that I spend most of my time complaining about what OpenClaw is doing wrong. And so I've started to develop a new mental model around how to use OpenClaw. Omar covered this really well. There are the tasks that the agents do when you give it something very specific, and you can run a benchmark, you can figure out like how good is a model at achieving a task. And then you have an agent which sort of allows a model to operate at a larger time horizon. And then you have a harness, which groups together agents and helps keep them in check. And my experience has been that OpenClaw is pretty good at being an agent, but in my experience, it's not very good at being a harness. Not yet, at least. As some folks have mentioned, it just sort of wants to do everything. And just like for people, it's sort of a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so because of that experience, because everyone has found their tools of choice, I happen to prefer the Claude Code harness. I wanted to find a way to use the Claude Code harness and still make use of all of the OpenClaw setup that I've done. So basically, this presentation is just so that I can cope with all the time that I have spent on OpenClaw. So let me describe to you what I mean by agent as a tool. When I use an agent completely as an agent, the sort of mental model that I bring into that is just you give it something that you want done, you sort of declare, I want you to code this feature, here's all the context, or I want you to go buy some hiking gear, I trust you, go for it. And then you have these very specific tasks. Of course, you could pick something as specific as a calculator, where you say calculate these numbers. Or more often you have a tool like RAG where you say, I want you to collect this context, and then I want you to give me a very specific answer just based on these 5 documents. And for those things, a lot of excellent engineers have created tools. And so the agent knows how to use MCP or whatever protocol you decide, and it can go use a tool and get a result. But there's sort of a middle ground where you have something that has a little bit of ambiguity, but you can't necessarily trust your big harness, right? So if you just had one agent in OpenClaw, or for a lot of people here, probably you're using Codex or Claude Code, and you can ask it, you can say, okay, I want you to build me a design system. And maybe it does a great job with that. But if you ask it for something that it's not really trained well on, you know, a lot of people that might be personal use cases or business cases that are less, have less data to back them up, so something like marketing. Those are the situations where you sort of start to see the gaps, right? You can say, okay, I've got this brand idea, here's some inspiration, generate me a logo. And sometimes it does a really good job, but if you have sort of a vision and you want it to reliably sort of create something that you consider good, in my experience, it will do that with coding-oriented goals, and for a lot of the non-coding-oriented goals, it struggles. And so I'm actually curious, I'm just curious to see in this audience what kind of non-coding uses you try and use your agents for. I'm going to read these out. Raise your hand if one of these is something that you're using it for, but if I don't list it off, just shout it out. So how many of you are using it for sort of like marketing or branding? Okay, a couple people. How many of you are using it for financial analysis, anything related to finances, personal finance, anything like that? What about just like personal things in general, meal planning, or just like automating your personal life? Okay, yeah, we're getting a couple of people in here. How many of you use it just for like technical writing, documentation, like things related to code but not specifically coding? Okay, that's more. That's great. That's great. Yeah, and so I just came up with these off the top of my head. One use case I found for it is monitoring the laundry in my building, which is awesome. But there's not a lot of data for that in Claude, so you gotta give it some skills there. Awesome. Okay, so it seems like there's pretty evenly distributed. People have lots of non-technical use cases, but they're all over the board. So I'll just speak generally. So right now, this whole diagram exists within OpenClaw, right? It has a harness, it's going to make a plan, and then it's going to go use, well, actually, I'm not sure that these all exist. I'm not sure how sub-agents work within OpenClaw. But in Claude Code or OpenCode, the harness contains the whole thing. So it makes a plan, it has agents that know how to use tools, and then it brings it all back together. And so the base reality, the memory, everything lives in one place. But that's not always going to get you where you want to go. And so this new mental model is that you have the harness, which in the case that I'm going to talk about today would be Claude Code, and then you have sub-agents that you talk to over MCP. So you can talk to a variety of agents. You could talk to Codex via MCP. Actually, I'm curious. One of the things I've found most useful, I'm curious how many people do this, is I have my primary coding harness, Claude Code, and every time I write something, I just ask it to get feedback from Codex, and then respond to it. Does anyone else use MCP to just like cross-review your code? Interesting. Okay, highly recommend that. That's not what this presentation is about. But it's an example of having your harness talk to other agents and then come back and sort of use everything that it's learned. So in this case, I've got my pump and it knows that I'm presenting, so it's talking to me. So in this case, the top one is going to be Claude Code, and the two tool agents are going to be OpenClaw. And let's jump in. So the key here is that these two OpenClaw sub-agents need to have a lot of specific context to be useful. And so we could walk through examples. I think that the one that I'm going to demo is having brand direction and generating logos, right? Every harness under the sun can generate a logo, but if you know that you have certain brand colors, and you know that you have a certain brand direction, and you know that you want it to sort of be flat, and you have all this information, you can organize that in a skill, and you can customize your sub-agent here to use exactly the tool that you want it to. And so in this case, you would build an agent in OpenClaw, and you would give it all this context. You would first give it the skills, and then you would say, I want you to use GPT-5 image to generate this logo, and I want you to do it in these ways. So here are the benefits, right? Like, everything I'm describing could also just be done with a skill, right? You could just go into Claude Code and you could say, if you are going to generate a logo, here's your skill. Do step 1, step 2, step 3. I think in the context, especially of a startup, being able to separate your agents allows you to share them over the internet more easily, and it allows you to sort of audit how well they are doing more easily. That's where the reliability comes in, is you could have that agent do its own logging. You could have that agent sort of have different security parameters than your own just harness running on your computer. And that's sort of where you would find the benefits of having OpenClaw run the agent rather than just letting your harness of choice run its own sub-agents. So I'm going to run through these quickly because I feel like the demo is the most interesting part. The pieces that I think are key here is that if you want your harness to use an external sub-agent, and I'm going to call it a sub-agent just because Claude Code is calling it. That's probably just definitions, but you need to have these pieces to make sure that it is reliable in the ways that I've just described to you. If you just connect Claude Code to OpenClaw and give it a way to generate an image, that would be really dumb because you're making 2 internet requests for basically no benefit. And so if you're going to put in the work to create these sub-agents, you want to make sure that your harness knows when to use it. You want to make sure that it has all the proper context and that again, in the context of a startup, that it has sort of its own repo so that as other people contribute to it, they're all contributing in one place. You want it to be able to review itself. So this is the benefit, is that I'm just going to show you one sub-agent, but there's a lot of work being done around, like, I'm going to call it adversarial agents, where one agent does the job, and then the other ones are like critical reviewers, and they say, I don't know about this, like, you could improve this. And so you want to give it, you want to be clear about how it should know if it's doing a good job. and then the last one here is also knowing when it's done. You don't want it to just spin forever, so you need to give it a clear, like, you're done, hand it back off to the primary harness. So let's see, okay. This is all things I've said. You want to keep it a tight scope. You want it to be very repeatable. That way, when you log things, you can tell if it's doing a better job over time or not. And you want it to have a definition of when it's done. So I'm gonna rush through these next slides. I'm gonna talk you through the example, and then I'm gonna try and build it. So right now, I have OpenClaw running with its primary agent. I'm calling it the Chief Operating Officer, Jeff, of this hypothetical startup. Since it's connected to my computer, I'm just going to run with some examples from the side project I'm working on. This COO agent is basically just responsible for searching the all the documentation across the startup. It knows where my Notion lives, it knows where Linear lives, and what the latest is there. And it knows how to read from and update my calendar. That in itself is probably not that useful. Claude Code could probably be a good COO. But the thing we can add to this, here are some of the skills that I just mentioned, is the CMO, the marketing agent. And so this one is responsible for knowing specifically all the things about what our approach is to marketing, how we do research internally. This agent should know the same things that a marketing person that you just onboarded to your startup would also know. And one of the things that it would specialize in is making a logo, in this case. So again, here are some examples. You would have your internal Notion written for the actual human to read. And then models are really good, so you could probably trust that to some extent. But I would also recommend rewriting the skills so that they are agent-specific. Things like, what questions do you have for me? And just little finesse that make the skills operate best with whatever particular agent you're, whatever particular model you're using for this sub-agent. So I'm talking here about just separating what they're responsible for. I feel like that's a little bit redundant. Here's the diagram, how it splits off. It should know when to make a request to Jeff or to Signal. And then all of the knowledge, all of the information that you're storing needs to come back to the harness. It needs to come back to whatever computer you started on, because if Jeff or Signal save a memory, then that will be useful next time you make a request to it. But your harness will also want to know if something broke, for example, that it shouldn't make a request in that same way. So basically, a downside of this architecture is that you have to save knowledge in the harness and in the sub-agent. I think we can come back to that another time. I think that, again, being able to audit it is one of the primary benefits, but I think the demo is more interesting. So, okay, I think that basically covers the concept. So I hope your prayers have been rolling in. The first thing that I'm going to do, I didn't want to do this blind. So the first thing that I'm going to demo is just having Claude Code talk to OpenClaw via MCP. So I'm going to ask it to, can you ask Jeff to summarize the last feature that, or let me see, the next feature that we need to build for OauthDesk in 2 sentences. I have made almost this exact request 3 times, and the first time it worked, and the second time it told me that I needed to update my laptop. So we'll see if the third time is a charm. So it's making this request over MCP. It can do it over CLI as well. My experience has been that, can you guys see this, by the way? Okay, perfect. My experience has been that CLI, it sort of freaks out because if you ask it to communicate over CLI on the same computer, it thinks it's coming from me, the writer, and so if it says, hi, I'm Claude Code, then it sort of shuts down from a security perspective. So I think just setting up MCP is usually the way to go. Let's see. Probably this isn't important, but it worked. I think it did a good job. So what I want to try and do is I'm going to open this as a new window. I'm going to see if I can ask it. Jeff, can you set up a second agent called Signal? And here, I'll say Signal is the chief marketing officer, and their primary goal will be to generate logos according to my design system. What do I need to do to get that set up? Okay, so I'm going to fire this off. The reason that I have Claude up as well, we'll see if it can monitor the connection from Claude to OpenClaw has to happen from the harness. You have to set it up that way. But I think setting up the agent itself, this Signal agent, has to happen within OpenClaw. And if any of you, if it's going wrong and any of you see why, just call it out. We also might be doing some waiting here, so hopefully, hopefully the internet is running as fast. Yeah, maybe I can take some questions while this is running. That's perfect. Yeah, go for it.
So if Claude Code and OpenClaw are on the same system,
yeah,
why would you connect Claude Code to OpenClaw through MCP versus just pointing it to the working directory that OpenClaw has all of its context in?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think probably I would just assume that they're not on the same computer, right? In a startup context, for the purposes of this demo, they are. But MCP can happen over the internet, and I think that's part of the benefit is that you can actually run this OpenClaw part on a managed service, and that was what Omar demoed last time. Yeah, yeah. You totally could just have it look at the files if it's all on the same computer. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, have you played around with ACP at all? You know what that is?
I don't know what it is. I've seen it hit my newsletters in the last week, but I'm not familiar with it.
It's basically just like MCP, but replace the M with an A.
Okay. Yeah. No. That's awesome.
The A stands for agent. So
okay.
They have a new protocol for agents to talk to each other, agent control protocol.
Cool.
Yeah. I haven't played around with it, just wanted to know if you did.
Yeah, no, I have not played around with it either. Let's see how we're doing. Any other questions? One in the back there.
Yeah, a little bit similar to that, since you spoke at the beginning regarding the different harness the OpenClaw has. I know that, well, since essentially, like many of those folks are working at OpenAI, I know they have been doing some work regarding some codecs harness in order to make OpenClaw work really well with that. I wonder if you have tried like all of those different harnesses with their own distinct model as well, your experience on that.
I have not tried all of them. My experience has been that if you use an open source model, it's really worth it to get to know the model and make sure that your prompting and harnessing is like very specific to that model. I think that for Claude and for anything that OpenAI is doing, they know their model very well. So if you use Codex with OpenAI models, then it tends to work and you can trust it more, and same with Claude. Yeah, that's probably the extent of my experience with that. Okay, yeah, I was waiting for it to say, hey, I'm done, but it didn't. Okay, let's see. Does Signal exist yet? This is one of my favorite things about watching the product releases from all the AI companies is seeing their demos fail in exactly the way that it's been failing for me for the last year and being like, see, it's broken. Yeah, I definitely find myself being like, so is it done? I don't think it knows if the agent exists. Let's see. Let me go ahead and ask Claude Code, do you see that there is a second open Claude agent now called Signal? Let's set up a separate MCP to connect to that agent. I think this audience is not sufficiently religious for my demo to go well. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to let Warp take over if Claude doesn't. Could you have Warp control Claude? Yes, but I think that would be a backwards way to think about it in my experience. I'm going to have it do a separate shim. So in this slide up here, where I show that something needs to make the decision about which agent to use, and something needs to save the memory once it's done. And so in my experience, Warp is best at basically interacting with the command line, which is what it's trained to do. And so I think having a more general purpose agent be the top and the bottom of this hamburger, and then having it talk to Warp and ask it to write the CLI commands would probably lead to more reliable results. Right. Totally. Totally. Yep. Yep. Okay. Let's see if we've made any progress. Can you please report? Here we go. Okay. Signal exists and is working now. The first smoke test hit a cold start timeout from Claude via the MCP shim. Target signals. Let's see. I'm going to copy this and say, here is some context that Jeff shared with me. You may have seen it, but if not, please add. And I'll paste that in. I tried using the high speed on both Codex and Claude Code recently, and it's incredible, and I do not have that much money, so unfortunately you're going to have to sit with me for this demo. So while that's going, let's say the next step is I would like to add a logo generation tool to Signal. Do I need to do that in a new window, or can we do it here? So just to confirm, they do have the agents tab here. Let's see. Someone was, yes. Okay, so we have main and we have signal. Main is Jeff. Let's see if it tells us anything. It's using the same model. Going back to this question about like, do you have different models for different things? The answer is sort of definitely yes, except by default, I would just use the best model. So if you're doing something like OCR, Gemini is famously the best at OCR, and so that's a case where I would go in here and make sure that the primary model is not OpenAI. But because the models sort of have tendencies and they are written to be able to talk to themselves better, then whatever your first model is, I would stick with that unless you have a good use case to change it up. So let's see, it's working. Decide what logo generation tool means. For V1, I'll say, yes, let's go with V1. Can you find a tool that you can install yourself quickly for a demo? And let's see how this MCP is going. It's waiting on me. What should I do with Jeff's snippet? Just context, don't send. And then again, sort of going back to this, because of OpenClaw's architecture, it wants to be its own harness, and we're sort of specifically asking it not to. And so in most cases when you're using OpenClaw, you're going to talk to the main session, and then it's going to go and configure its own agents. But the way that I'm setting up this MCP is I'm setting up the shim to go directly to the signal agent. And that way we're not wasting time having one agent talk to another agent, talk to another agent. And my experience is that a very small amount of information is lost between each conversation. It's not enough that it's, let me see, I want to, too many negatives. It is worth it most of the time to have one conversation going back and forth because you get most of the information. But if you have a chain of agents talking to each other, you're gonna have a game of telephone. And by the end, you only get back a little bit of what you started with. I set it up with my girlfriend so that we could talk to each other through the agents because I was getting accused of talking to my agent too much. And what I found was that the way I set it up the first time, the conversation would start, and then it would make it to the other person, and then it would come back to their agent, and then my agent would go, oh, cool. And it wouldn't actually pass the message back to me, if that makes sense. And so, okay, I'll set up a V1 demo path here. How are we doing on time? Do we want to, I could probably wrap up here, but if we can get a logo generated, that would be cool. Give me a signal if we need to wrap up here. I'm gonna go with, let's go with GPT image 2. I believe we already have the keys to use that, right? Let's see. What I'm going to do next, once this responds, is I'm just going to ask it to take my design system that I just happen to have on my computer right now and load that in as a skill. And we'll see how that does. While that's going, can you take a look at my design system Elm and write a short skill for Signal about how to create a logo in that style. And so again, because I use Claude Code the most, I'm most familiar with how that spins up sub-agents, but there's a lot of different opinions among the harness creators about how the main agent should spin up sub-agents. I don't know why it needed iTunes there, but we're about to get a very musical logo. But yeah, so I'm not sure if this is single-threaded, but we might have to wait for it to do both. Let's see. So I'm just going to say, please report back. Oh my gosh, it's going wild. I am going to delete OpenClaw after this, so. Back once you have installed the OpenAI tool. Okay, the first image generation call reached OpenAI, but OpenAI image 2 rejected transparent background output. Easy fix for signals v2 defaults. No, stick with the latest and don't worry about transparent background for now. Let's see. Oh, it might be too late. It moved on without me. I do feel like that's half the fun with talking to OpenClaw, since it sort of doesn't update you as it goes, is that sometimes it hasn't done any work, and sometimes it has done quite a bit and didn't want you to know about it. So let's see if we can land this demo. Agent signal. All right, so it's going. Let me take questions one more time, and then I'm gonna take a stab at asking Claude Code to generate a logo, and if it doesn't work, just know that 9 hours from now I could have gotten it working.
Hi, I would love to know how would agents decide which agents to choose. Also, I would love to know your thoughts on context and memory over time.
Yeah.
What point it would start overfitting or poisoning itself, so
right.
When we should say stop.
Yeah. Let me take both of those questions. Let me see if I remember them. One of them is about context and how to use context effectively for these tools. Going back to this same architecture where the harness goes and talks to different agents. This is a coding concept, but the idea of it being stateless, where not much is saved on these tools, I've never run into the context issue, because you just sort of fire it off and say, go build a logo, and then the next time it receives a call, it's starting from scratch again. So really only the original harness needs to worry about context bloat. What was your first question? Yes, okay, yeah. How does the original harness decide when to go and use the tool? And that I'm curious about ACP, but MCP has recommendations. My recommendation to everyone here is just assume that your agent can do it the first time. Just ask Claude Code to do it and wait until it messes up, because Claude is not very self-aware about what it's good and bad at. But you can write a memory and say, in Opus 4.7, Claude, you are bad at generating logos. So if anything related to marketing comes to you, please forward the request. to your sub agent. So let's see how this is going. It's messaging something. All right, dry run false. So I think it's trying for real. Yeah, let's see if that's anything good. Uh-oh, didn't copy it correctly. This is a path. Oh, it's a path. Okay, let me see. Can I say again? Right. No. Let's see. Can't be reached. Invalid URL. Maybe it's been removed already. Okay. Just to warp, or would you say to Claude? To Vim. Okay. Let's see. All right. I'll go to an actual. This file does not exist.
It's also, you need to register your home directory, so put tilde before KDAV.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. So before here, like this. Okay. All right. Let me ask it to just generate a real one. And when you generate a logo, please save it to my downloads folder. Okay. The main thing I want to test here is the MCP. So I'm gonna just try that, and then we'll see if it comes back with anything. Then we'll call that a success. Can you reach out to Signal and ask it to generate a logo of a torch in the style of Elm? Done. Okay. The temporary path is oh, look at that. Okay, so it did fire off. We made it from Claude Code to Signal. Let's see if it works and comes back. This would be awesome if the demo works. I would have bet against me in Polymarket. I also would say be careful of this timeout. By default, your main harness is going to be conservative about how long it's willing to keep an open connection with another agent. So if you're asking it to do something quick, that's a good thing. You don't want to be sitting there waiting for a service to spin and spin. But if you're asking it to generate a logo, you may need to specifically set a timeout of like 10 minutes or however long that might realistically take. Image generation, it's getting close. Now I'm going to be disappointed if it doesn't work. It's been a while since I've generated an image like this, so we might have time to take one more question. Okay, we might need to wrap it up. All right. If that's the case, let me open up my downloads and see if anything has made it there. Not yet. All right. Well, it was worth a try. Actually, let me do this real quick. Let me share my LinkedIn if anyone wants to connect, and would be happy to keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Caleb. As the nature of these demos, sometimes they just take a while, and the agents are thinking.
Take a while.
Just one more try.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna give us like 2 minutes, and then we have a quick presentation from our sponsor for this event. So hang tight. Thanks. All right, welcome back. So I'll just do a quick introduction. So up next is Rob Meadow, who has a background starting a few AI companies, and this is his current venture. And their goal is to connect 1 billion humans to each other. Before they launch, they are looking for a community to test out their platform, and today they're here to tell you all about it. So let's give a warm welcome to Rob.
Thank you. We figured we'd bribe you with some pizza and drinks if you got here earlier enough to help us out. So we're launching Glow soon here, but we need people to test it. So the idea behind Glow, you can scan that QR code, just give it to your agent. If you have an OpenClaw, read this website, set it up. We also have an app. We also have a ChatGPT app. You can plug it into Claude. But the idea is these LLMs, these agents, are good at finding information, but they suck at finding people. And we want to get people back into the real world, connecting with each other, and making interesting connections. So the way Glow works is you plug it in and you say, hey, I'm just moved to the city. I'm looking for a new friend. I need a date for tomorrow night. I want to go play golf this weekend. Who out there would be good? And Glow is able to go through and look for other people within the Glow network, but also go out of the Glow network. It's got a bunch of agents that are always scouting, looking at Discord, looking at Reddit, looking at Twitter, looking at different places to find people. And Glow will make the intro and say, hey, I've got a friend that's looking to play golf tomorrow. I see that you just posted you want to play golf. Can I connect you guys? And your agent will get the connection and bring it back to you. So that's the idea of Glow. Sign up. Meet other people in this room. You guys aren't doing a good job of talking to anybody but the person you're sitting next to. So Glow will help you with that. And thanks for having us. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Rob. I think what Glow is working on also underscores this idea of that as this world becomes more digital and as we onboard into more and more of these technological tools and agents, what still is constant is human connection. And so if we can use these platforms to help us connect to each other better, we all benefit, and we're all human at the end of the day. And so thank you for being here today. This event is meant to bring together a community of like-minded people. I'm sure you are having amazing conversations, and yeah, check out Glow, and hopefully you'll have many more. And thanks again to them for sponsoring the event. Let's give them another round of applause. And also thank you for your patience. I know this is running a little bit over, and so we'll try to wrap up quickly with our last presentation. Just give us a couple minutes to switch over. All right, thanks. So, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ethan Weidman. Ethan, I met at our first OpenClaw event and really enjoyed our conversation with him. I'm excited to bring him on as a speaker tonight. He is the founder of Mangrove V Labs, which is a Dominican biotech company building Modulus, which is an agent operating system for biorefineries, labs, and environmental systems that unifies digital twins, computational biology, geospatial intelligence, simulation, and intelligent process control. His talk gives teams like yourselves a practical set of rules for knowing when an agent is actually needed and when the real issue is missing evidence, lack of durable workflows, unclear authority, or the wrong boundary. He works with clients through NoScope Studio, a software engineering and AI automation agency in New York that builds reliable systems for complex operational problems. Let's welcome Ethan.
But yeah, I got you. I think Caleb tapped on this in his in his talk. But show of hands. How many of you have agents that talk to each other? So my response to that is stop doing it. Not really, but stop making that like the default architecture. So I want to give multiple agents some credit. They are useful when you need like independent judgment. And what I want to talk to you about today is that I think, sorry, give me a moment. Actually, oh, I have the wrong thing. Could you give me like 1 minute? Yeah, just let them know. Yeah, guys, just give me like 1 second, okay? Thanks.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
Yes.
figured out some file stuff. We took some deep breathing exercises. Take it away, Ethan.
Yeah. So I had a script for this, but I totally sent myself the wrong one. And I'm sitting here reading this, and it is totally misaligned with what I was about to say. So I am going to wing this a little bit. All right. So I don't know if you've seen all of these. The motivation for this was basically like, I don't know if you've seen like all of these companies trying to sell you like replace your entire marketing department, replace this, here's an AI agent employee. They never get sick. They never complain. I look at that and I think, right, but how do they coordinate? How do they communicate? You see all of these people on LinkedIn, these influencers, they might be talking about like, hey, I created an entire team, and now they do all of my marketing and all of my sales. I fired everybody. I'm a one-man shop now, right? It's clearly just sales, right? It's snake oil, because when it comes down to it, right? More agents just add more boundaries, and Caleb really hit on that at the end. And that's ultimately more places, okay, you can see it, more places for evidence to disappear. And that makes it really, really hard to actually inspect the result of the agent process. It makes it really, really hard to actually work with these systems and to create something that you can depend on with them. One second. So I came up with this example. It's basically something that I've dealt with a client, and actually built a system around this, which I'll be showing at the end. If you have ever tried to compare pricing across maybe you're shopping around, you want to buy a new blouse, you want to buy, be in your business, you need to buy some small electronic parts. So you go and you maybe set up a system. If you set up a multi-agent system, maybe you have a couple of agents that go out, maybe one agent for one company, Mouser or Amazon or Walmart, right? And what you'll find is that oftentimes there's different prices with different units, that you send the system out, system comes back, the agents come back, and they all report into maybe, let's say, an analysis agent, and they provide, one says that there was, it's 42 cents, another says that it was 19 cents per unit, but when you actually have multiple systems that are talking to each other, multiple agents that are talking to each other, what you really see is that there is compression happening at the boundary, so between agents. And what that really means is that you're compressing evidence, and you can't actually then trace back to, you can't trace back when you look at this, you're like, wow, why is this price so different from all the other prices? So I like to think of it in terms of receipts. You got to always ask the agent for receipts. You got to always make sure that the system can provide receipts. And the thing is, you don't want that to be with the agent. You need to externalize that. I've found that externalizing it to a system that all of the agents can essentially read off of, what you find is that you don't really need all of those agents, right? You just need a solid system. Now with, I tried OpenClaw recently, and it has like lobster workflows where you can sort of have it build a set of schemas for whatever workflow you're about to do. In this case, we've got like ID, part, unit price. This is obviously pricing information, and it's a schema. So there's a schema for each stage in the workflow. But a schema is a contract. It's not proof, ultimately, or evidence that it was filled out correctly. So I think of agents in terms of their power. I think of them like, and I think where they really are strong is when there's judgment that's involved and when there is critique that's involved. So a good example might be, let's say you're writing a paper, you're drafting a paper for some scientific paper, and you want some review, you want some feedback. So an agent is 100% the right tool for that job. Another agent might be there to provide, a countervailing perspective, or to essentially respond and edit the draft you created. And you can actually put them in a loop, and you'll see that you get a really, really good paper out of it with pretty minimal hallucinations. Agents are for independent review, and whenever you need a capability, reach for a tool. Whenever you need more time, set up a workflow. Whenever you need to consider time at all, something that needs to pause, something that needs to happen in a particular sequence. Whenever you need memory, you reach for state. And whenever you need to manage authority, you want to set up gates. So that's a layer, a control layer, right? So ultimately, more judgment, adding on more agents does not repair missing infrastructure. If you have a bad supplier, and let's say there was a minimum order quantity or something, doesn't matter how many pricing agents or validator agents you add, you have missing infrastructure. And without the ability to validate that, without the ability to externalize the information that captures, you could say, okay, well, I'll add a new field to the schema for that. But you could do that, more or less infinitely. So what you really need is you need a system for that, an externalized system, something to externalize it to. So a good heuristic is, as I was saying, if you need to know something, grab a tool. If you need to remember something, grab state or set up state. If you need to wait for something, workflow, and need to forbid, that's a gate. Let's see. You know what? I am just going to show you what I built around this concept. Let me know, can you guys see this, or do I probably need to make it bigger, right? Yeah. So this is PyAgent. I don't know if any of you, who here has used PyAgent, set up PyAgent? Do you like it? Yeah. So this is, without a question, my favorite. I've set up OpenClaw. It's fun, but it's completely chaotic. I can't do real work with it. I can't do serious work with it. With Claude Code, it's slow. and it's painful, but it does a really good job once it gets going. But with PyAgent, you can actually, and not to mention, almost all of the systems, whether it's Hermes or OpenClaw, they generally require an MCP to add new capabilities. But PyAgent offers extensions, which I think are really, really powerful. And so, as an example, let me actually just throw it out to the audience. Give me something that you're looking to buy, something that you're looking to, I don't know, maybe screw it. Good umbrella. A Mac Mini, ooh, yeah, good. Or a Mac Studio, that's gonna be hard to find, right? Use CrawlKit to find me the best price across suppliers for a Mac Studio with, and this is probably going to be impossible, 512 gigabits of RAM. So an Ultra, right? I think Amazon basically bought up all of these. Yeah, right. Yeah, like literally. Yeah, sure. Any questions? Yep. Sorry. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we do. Yeah, definitely.
What build are you most proud of? What do you think, what build had the best use case? Solve the best problem?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think the best. Sorry, give me 1 sec. Hold on. I want to make sure. Nope. Okay. So in terms of automations, I think that this is going to be so there was this, I think the hardest, the best, there's a couple of them, but I think the hardest ones are legacy systems that you need to automate, and especially legacy systems that need a migration before you can actually put in place any automations. So I don't know if you're you a developer? You are? Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever worked with like really ancient PHP systems that have never been upgraded and were built by a team for 15 years with basically no architect or a senior engineer. And you get in and there's like a SQL server that has absolutely no foreign keys or anything like that. There was a situation where I was basically handed a system like that and had to, actually it was with Omar, had to essentially fend off because the prior team basically was thrown out for, let's call it malpractice, and they were attacking the system and trying to more or less destroy the business that was built on it.
They had a whole bunch of back holes that they put in there.
Swiss cheese.
Yeah, and their system was crap anyway. So I don't know if they put those in there on purpose or not. I think it was by accident.
Yeah. Anyway, the system that we ultimately set up to both fend off the attacks, to harden the system, and then to ultimately move it off the servers where it was fully exposed, was basically like a control plane of its own. And I mean, it was hard to even get a handle on the actual structure of anything underneath. But I think the automations that we built for that, which were basically, sorry, I'll take a different question, sorry.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of questions for you, but I'll keep it to one.
Yeah.
I love your compression analogy.
Mm-hmm.
What have you noticed about that? Like, of course, if you hand off information between two agents and you say, like, summarize what you know, that's going to create a huge amount of compression. But you could take it in any direction. Like, I'm curious about how that compression works inside of a harness. Like, every harness is using its own sub-agents. So how do they avoid that compression? And then, like, are there any things that you have noticed to, quote unquote, decompress on the other side, where you receive some information and maybe you could prompt it, like, based on the prompt that you receive, please consider the intent of the sender. I don't know. Like, what have you noticed about how to minimize compression at, agent to agent layer?
So I think that to minimize the lossiness of it.
Exactly.
Assuming that there's no external system to lean on, right? The best thing that you can do is to establish like a really, really, I think that coming up with an ontology is that is completely shared, builds essentially a shared vocabulary, and as long as because it's just, no matter if you have boundaries, right? And there is some interpretation going on, it's always going to be somewhat lossy, but as long as there is a shared communication layer that ultimately defines, like, me and you right now are talking in English, I understand you, you understand me, that the communication layer becomes the externalization layer, and I think that really, really concrete ontologies that properly capture the actual domain that is being operated on, so the closer you can get to that, the better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. So any other questions? Yep.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about compression, but Caleb took that question. So can you talk more about gating and how you use gating? Is that for aligning? Like, do you use like gating explicitly when you'll have explicit blocks within your development, like phases, or how does it work for you?
So I'll speak about something that I completely forgot to talk about, which is the concept of lineage. And I think that is probably the most, gating is really, really important. Having well-defined boundaries, and at the boundary defining clearly what sort of actions can be taken is key. But I think that perhaps even more important, because ultimately if you have a gate, you have some, sorry, who asked the question? Oh, okay. Ultimately, if you have a gate, you have some condition, right? And that condition requires some evaluation of evidence, right? So if you need to be able to actually understand what is true and what is false, right? And that gate needs to be able to actually, in some way, verifiably know what is true and what is false, right? So making sure that everything that the agents produce, every artifact, every interpretation, I'll just say every transformation of data is logged and essentially chained together, such that you can walk back to it, which actually was in my slides, right? So I'll just jump to it. So I talked about receipts. The receipts are essentially points in a chain of evidence that builds up a lineage. Receipt 1 is essentially your observations. You need to ultimately collect the data before deciding. Receipt 2 is making sure that you have properly typed the evidence and that you have also embedded semantics, the meaning, into the evidence. So supplier name, manufacturer part number, these are descriptions for each field, right? So it's not just shape, it's semantics. And then maybe a normalization or some other transformation happens. That needs to be inspectable. And then, and only then, can the gate know that it actually has bad rows. If you don't have that, then ultimately your gates are no better than the agents making a decision and stochastic guess in English or whatever language.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Huh?
Can you go back to your terminal?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering if you have a stance on this, because I firmly believe in the world of agents or the world of LLMs, we need to work through terminal. I don't understand why people are using IDEs or like fixated on GUIs anymore. I mean, GUIs are for humans, but if we're really focused on this like agentic world, terminal seems like the logical endpoint. Do you have a stance with that? Because I've seen you use terminal throughout, your endpoint, and yeah, I just want to know what's your stance on it.
So I actually have like 3 IDEs, probably more installed on this machine. I still write my code oftentimes, and I am more or less, I think that we need IDEs, or at least some, I don't think everything should happen in the terminal, because if everything's happening in the terminal, then you're essentially, and there are workflows where I think it's appropriate, but especially if you're engineering something, you're building something, I think that seeing the overall structure as it's growing and being able to, because it's like, if you try to just operate in the terminal period, right? You're not really seeing the file tree that's being built. You're not controlling the structure, and what ends up happening is that there's just chaos in the folder, right? There's chaos in the repo. There's chaos, and you could try to control it here, and you could just tell the agent, oh yeah, put this here, put that there, but you need some way to, see the system that's being built, the structure of it, and to feed that back, right? Because you are the control layer on top, if you can think about it like a, some sort of like closed loop. You're the layer on top, and you need to actually have good information to work with. So I guess that's my stance on it. Yeah, any more? Oh yeah. So let's see. Likely back ordered, yeah. So no surprise, but let's see. It says, all right. So we got CDW, almost $10,000, and is that even? Let's see. Oh yeah, 512. So yeah, that's not even there. So what you're looking at is, and this is, by the way, why I love PyAgent as well. So you can actually hook into the user interface in PyAgent and customize the way that a tool call responds. So normally when you see a tool call respond in the terminal or anywhere else, you'll see that it's like, either like JSON or something unstructured. But here, I defined the way that would render. Anyway, so it built a data set, and if I give me the lineage for each entry in this set, this may or may not work because I didn't actually make sure that it created that lineage, but let's see, track back to how we got all of that information. Yeah, okay. Okay. Maybe it responds, maybe it doesn't. All right. Yeah. So something that I've been adding in here. Right now, you have to tell it to actually create a pipeline, but I actually think that lineage should be like directly built in so that nothing can happen without that. But yeah, so it compiled this itself. So it's like, all right, so source. Basically what's happening here is it's reading the text logs, right? And that's what I want to get away from. So it did its best to respond to me, but I do not have. This has not been externalized. This trace here and this trace here. This is just its interpretation of the messages above. What this system does when you actually tell it, make sure that you build a pipeline, is that each stage, each transformation is properly created in a database and linked together into a workflow, and then the workflow executes. And all of that is done before any data gets into the system, anything is queried, any spiders run or crawlers run. I find that, especially when you're working with systems that actually need to produce, let's say something that people are going to eat, or something that is going to make sure that a reactor or bioreactor is set to exactly the temperature it needs to be at. You need to externalize all of that, right? All of those structures. And I think that no matter what, that putting in place a control layer beneath everything else and enforcing that no matter what is key. Anyway, so thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ethan. All right. Appreciate your patience. Are we interested in one more 10-minute presentation?
Do it.
Spoiler alert, it'll be me.
Do it.
Yeah? Okay. All right, let's take it home. So over the past, let me also grab my laptop here and set up as I speak. So over the past week, thank you. Thank you, Omar. Over the past week, I've been working on setting up a Hermes agent for ZeroSpace. So we're a creative studio. There's a lot of knowledge bases, as all the typical messy complexities of running a business and working with clients. Whoa, that's our real. So the challenge is really, how do you create an agent that a company can work with and that multiple people can work with, and let it do things without drifting off and sort of hallucinating the vision of the company, the strategy, what any given project is. And so what I want to present is a step towards that. You know, it's still early. I literally have been implementing it this week, but I think it's a sneak preview into what a system like this could be. And hopefully you guys can take some inspiration around how I built this and use it yourselves. You know, this is just the way we landed on as a team. It is by no means the way you have to do it. And I'll actually point out decisions I made that are in context of ZeroSpace that might not actually hold true for you in your use case. So let me continue with this display setup. It flashed. That's right. I had it on there first. It's duplicating. It's duplicating? Yeah. I see it. Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, cool. Thank you, Omar. All right. Cool. I'll see this. Cool. So I'm going to run through this pretty quick and then just show you a little bit just behind the scenes. So what I want to present is an operating system for a creative technology studio. That's what ZeroSpace is. It is Hermes-based. It works across Slack, GitHub, Linear, Notion, meeting notes, and the terminal. And the main point I want to drive home is that agents that do actual work for your company need source of truth rules, permissions, durable context, and a way to learn from repeated work. All right, so here's some framing around this. A company might onboard multiple engineers every month, so it's always been important to make your code base easy to learn. And it's not just your code base, it's your knowledge documents, it's your company vision, your HR policies, you know, all the information that a human needs to know in order to make good decisions, an agent also needs to know. The difference is that every time you run an agent, it has to learn that from scratch, okay? So it has no prior memory of anything, you know, until we solve continual learning. And so you have to build systems that are really specific about the information that you give to that agent in order to have it make the right decisions and not repeat the same mistakes and also not get confused, because it's really easy to confuse these agents by giving it redundant context or out-of-date context. So these are all things I was thinking about. So our architecture for Hermes/ZeroGen agent, which is sort of this internal team inside ZeroSpace, is Slack, meetings. I use Granola for meetings, which I'll get into that in a little bit. GitHub, Linear, and Notion. So this is kind of like a quirky stack. Like, I don't think, you know, other people might use this. They might choose their own tools. But it's sort of, we landed on this because we're a mixture of like a creative technology company, a production company, and like a R&D, like engineering company. And so all these things, like we use GitHub every day for our work. You know, we're delivering code, we're shipping projects. And so that made sense as like this, this source of truth for how we instruct our agent. We use Slack to communicate, which is pretty normal. Linear, so Linear is like a project management tool. It's used by a lot of engineering teams, but at its core, you can use it in a lot of other contexts. Like people use it to, you know, plan their weddings or like build a house. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be related to code or engineering. And then we use Notion just because it's a very standard, like easy UI, pretty straightforward way to put brainstorm notes, dump raw thoughts, collect meeting notes in to give to the rest of your team. So we treat it as kind of this scratch pad for both humans and agents to work together. You know, not everything is codified right away. So you're ideating on Slack, you're ideating on Notion, you're having meetings and recording those meeting transcripts. This information has to live somewhere, has to be reviewed, and then it has to be promoted to your baseline context for all the agents that will come after. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you do a bunch of brainstorming, you like a diamond shape. You go out, all right, and then you narrow in, and then you have to have an inflection point where that new source of truth actually gets distributed across your agents and in your context. Cool. So this is kind of a repeat of what I just said, but once you have this context, what happens for an agent? Okay. Well, before it does things, it has access to that context. So it has access to your files, your current pull requests, which are ways in which you change a GitHub repository with new information, as information about your projects, like what is the current operational state of the company. It has access to your meeting transcript. So it has access to a bunch of information. What I'll get into next is like, how do you decide what information is pertinent? As a way for you to promote context. So you have new context. How do you actually incorporate that into the system? And then it has bound autonomy. And so this is where all the existing tools we use come in. We have permissions in Notion so that certain people can only see certain things. You want to have sensitive data. You need to respect that. Likewise for code. Omar earlier tonight was talking about how his agent pushed code to main. Right? So in GitHub, you can have a rule that prevents anybody from pushing to main. It has to be a PR. It has to be a new change that gets reviewed and approved before getting integrated. Right? So you should use the existing systems you have to build guardrails around your agents and treat agents like a person. I actually don't think they should get full autonomy per se unless you're comfortable with the consequences of that. All right, so this is another review of the tools that we use. And I think there was a QR code here. So if you want to look at the slides, that's what the QR code link is, and you can link to the tools that I talk about. Sorry about that. Okay, so one by one, GitHub is our canonical operating context. It's usually used for code, right? But agents are code. And code can be reviewed, it can be commented on, it can be debated and discussed, and then ultimately approved. So we actually found that GitHub is kind of like a good shape, for company knowledge. So I actually, prior to ZeroSpace, I worked at a company founded by a very technical team that actually used GitHub to run their company. Like, your onboarding field guide when you started would be on GitHub. And when someone wanted to make a change to that, like the HR department, they would open a pull request. And now they grumbled a little bit because it's not really designed for non-engineers per se. But I think anyone can learn to use that tool, and everyone should learn how to use that tool, especially if you're dabbling in software with a non-technical background. Like, you're introduced to this universe of tools, and we should all just adopt the same language. Linear, like I mentioned, is for execution state. So this is where in-progress tasks are tracked. This is where we know what are the active projects happening in the company. And issues in linear get tracked to issues in Git, or they can be. And they can also be tracked to your pull requests in GitHub. So when you have a unit of work and you're ready to have it reviewed, that actually gets synced with linear, and the right people can see, oh, here's this task. Okay, it's in this state. It needs review. Let me go review it. And then it's approved. Boom, it's complete. It's done. It's off the docket. And that's a record, of tracked tasks. Notion, a human workspace. Notion, we love it, we use it. I'm trying to figure out, this whole exercise is the balance of what belongs in Notion and what belongs in GitHub. We use Slack and Granola for meetings and just casual thoughts. They're not necessarily super final. And then there's a always on memory and skills. I won't touch on that too much today, just for time reasons, but do know that there are ways to get your agent to learn organically over time. Now, I posit that this is not necessarily enough. You kind of want explicit learning of no, listen to this is what's important. But over time, it's just kind of ambiently learning things about the way you work, the way your team works. The issue with an automatic memory is that it can learn the wrong things, like Omar mentioned. So you do want to keep in mind, maybe sometimes you prune your memory. Okay, so this is basically what the flow looks like for us. We capture our notes in Granola, which is this software here. Then we push that to Notion and Slack. We talk about it. We land on a decision. Then we ask ourselves, or we ask our agent to promote that. And so it'll look at that thread. It'll propose a plan. Then it'll open a pull request, which is basically a change request, into our Git repo, so that this decision now becomes codified, and then we verify that. And so, we verify that as humans in the loop, and then the agent, we can also have like a reviewer agent that hooks in and makes sure that this proposed change is in line with what's historically been there. Okay. So I want to share with you this image here. This is a article I read about accounting AI company called Basis, and they have a team, a specialized team in their company called Atlas, which is all around like what does an agentic company look like. And so they made this distinction of like canon versus not canon, right? So canon is things about your code or about your company knowledge that is true, and we know that that's true because we've vetted it, we've approved it, et cetera. And then we have an idea of what's not canon, of like here are just like random loose thoughts, or here are proposals that haven't necessarily been confirmed yet. These are the things that are dangerous for agents because it can pick up the wrong things and suggest things where it's like, oh no, like we talked about that 2 months ago and we decided not to do that. Why are you bringing it up now? That's the problem we want to avoid. So we actually treat Slack and Notion as like not in our canon, right? So we actually tell our agents like, yes, like this information exists, but this should not be the first thing you read and you reason about when you're trying to develop a new feature, or arrive at some strategic insight or some plan for the company's growth, right? So we want to be very careful. For you, ask yourself, what is canon and what is not canon, and how can I maintain that separation? And it's a continual process. You'll always be thinking, when you have a document, it's like, where should this live? Is it ready yet for all my agents to know about this every time they run, or not? And maybe you can also have a system where agents listen to certain things. You don't have to expose all your company knowledge to the agent every run. You can have like sub-agents. You can have discoverability. So there's a concept called progressive skills or progressive disclosure, where you basically have these big buckets of skills for your agents, and it could be like media production, and it could be coding. Now, a coding agent doesn't necessarily need to learn about media production, so it's just going to not decide to read that when it tries to do a coding skill. Okay, here is this is a big file, but this is our like version 1 of our context agent. So this is what I propose should be this GitHub repository for our context, okay? It has a bunch of policies. I worked with an agent to try and write this. I also reviewed it and commented it because sometimes it just does too much, right? Like if you can relate to this, like you ask an agent to think through something and it just gives you like an essay, and you're like, no, like I needed like 2 paragraphs, or I needed some bullet points. Like I didn't need all this, and most of it's redundant anyways. And so I had to go through that same exercise, and I encourage you to as well. Such a fundamental document should be human reviewed. You should apply your own judgment and critical thinking to it. And I think that the agents, don't have judgment unless you insert it yourself. So, for example, going through this, we have, let's see, permissions. So agents may draft documents, they may open PRs, summarize context, and flag drift, right? So they can, say I'm coding, I develop a new feature, that becomes a PR. I have a meeting note, I ask my agent to summarize it and pull out the relevant parts for myself. And then I maybe have a reviewer agent that's like looking through my company documents and flagging, oh, like this actually contradicts what you said last week. Right? That's all totally fine and fair game. However, they need confirmation before changing the product canon, changing the roadmap and the priority, mutating our project management state, and merging policy changes. Right? So this is actually what you're seeing right here in GitHub is where a proposed change would land. And so before it gets merged in, like you see I have ways to comment it. I can like add, line commits of like, we need to make this more concise. These are all things I can do to give feedback, and then it's actually listening to that feedback, and it's gonna give me an updated version of this PR as we go. Right. I have this role set out for a librarian, which keeps my context clean, linked, current, and non-duplicated. And so that's what I mentioned before. So this agent, this is a proposal for an agent, not yet implemented, that's just going to be crawling around my code base like a gardener, like weeding out the rotted context. Our reviewer agent that's reviewing incoming things. So gardener/librarian works with existing context. My reviewer works with incoming context, new context, and make sure that they're clear, that there's not conflicts, contradictions, and that they're ready to be merged. This is a way to track decisions that have been made. So when we do make a decision, we log that. We put a new file in this repo saying, okay, we arrived at this decision. And why am I doing all this, right? So eventually, like, the knowledge agents that I use, and Hermes itself, the thing that's powering the company operating system, is looking to this. Like every time it needs clarity on a decision, it's going to reference this repository, and so I want to make sure it's really clean. Okay, so that was source of truth rules, documents, PR history. Now, when I have new ideas, what does it look like? Okay, say I want to make a new agent that prunes context, or a new integration for Google Drive, or maybe I want to shift my strategy and go from advertising and marketing clients towards film and TV clients. Well, I'm gonna think through this with the agent. I'm going to propose an update to this little repository here. Right now, it's pretty empty because we're just starting, right? This pull request that you're seeing right now is me, like in real time, figuring out what is the right version 1, what is the right starting point, and then this becomes the operating manual. Cool. So let me show you a little peek into these two other tools. So we have Notion here. This is a very starter template Notion. It's mostly empty because I haven't populated it just yet, but I'm going to start migrating company documents here. And this is really just, I'm going to treat this like a scratch pad, right? I'm not going to take anything here as gospel. I'm going to take GitHub as gospel. And then Linear, just to give you a little peek into what that looks like. Fairly standard. It basically has a bunch of, let's see here, it has things like projects, initiatives, and so I've actually created an initiative for myself to establish this repository. I have some projects here which are like subtasks, so I have this ZeroGen Agent 1, which is building what I've been describing today. And I use a tool called Composio. This is basically a way to connect a bunch of different apps to your agent, right? So here I've connected these tools. You have all these. There's over 1,000. And if you've ever, been frustrated with like connecting things via MCP and like doing authentication, I would encourage you to check out Composio. They're not a sponsor of this event yet. But I found it super useful, and it, sometimes there's a balance, right? Sometimes you actually want to get the GitHub CLI, the GitHub tool, because it's just like really well built out. But for a lot of things, you just want something that's good enough for the agent to read the documents and reason about things, and you don't need it to do the most complex things ever in like Google Docs, right? I'm not gonna ask it to like make like a financial model just yet. I just need it to be able to read things. So I'm gonna use this tool because it's sort of this like workhorse, jack of all trades. There's a billion integrations, and I just log in with my account, my agent has credentials to this, and so by connecting my agent to Composio, it sort of passes through access to all these tools, should I allow them. Right, so yeah, pretty nifty time saver. And this is just things I already talked about, but the agent can do certain things, and then me as the human, I review certain things. So to close off, my goal has been to build an environment where agents know where the truth lives, what they can change, when to ask for help, and where I come in as the human in the loop to review it. And then over time, this compounds and subsequent runs are better informed and improved and more accurate to my intention, which is we're all looking for. We're all looking for agents that do things on the first try, that actually feel like they're listening to us, that aren't getting the wrong ideas or getting distracted or being too narrowly focused, right? And this is a step on how we get there. So thanks for listening. I have a couple of things I can show you after this, but I'll also take some questions in case folks have any. Thank you.
Hey man, great presentation. I have a question. So as your context keeps increasing, how are you allowing the agent to access the right context? Like, is there a strategy on how you're connecting your documentation to each other in a way that is efficient for the agent as well, not to load all that context?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and something that I can't say I have like battle tested yet because this is such a new system, but here's where I would start. You want to apply the concept of progressive disclosure as much as possible. So what is progressive disclosure? It's a way of structuring your context such that you're only exposing the relevant things to the agent when it asks for them. So in practice, say you have a repo that has like tons and tons of context, right? Like a book's worth of context. What you can do is you can have a table of contents at the root, right? That tells the agent, if you're trying to do this kind of task, if you're trying to do marketing, go here. If you're trying to do coding, go here. And now the agent will like, okay, like I'm trying to do, like launch a new social campaign or like come up with the post ideas. All right, let me just go to marketing. And then inside marketing, you can have, here's my social posts, here's my newsletter, here's my, event strategy. And so it can actually have a sub table of context within that. And so you can actually go as granular as you want, and it'll just hop and take the right path to exactly what it needs to know.
Any others?
Hi. I'm curious about how you would populate that table of content in such a way that it's not like anything that is not necessarily being accepted is filtering in. And also when working maybe cooperatively, like in big Gits with many people to like how to make sure that everything that is in that table of content is legit and,
Yeah, good question. So maybe I'll go back here to this repo. So let's imagine that this has a table of contents, and your first question was like, how do you make sure that's kept up to date? And so my idea earlier was like, let's have a little job that runs every day, and it just reads to this repo, and it makes sure that this table of contents is still up to date, and that there's not anything missing, and that there's not anything that's been removed, right? And so once it detects that, it'll open a new pull request here, and if you imagine, like it'll say something like, oh, adding a new item to the table of contents, and inside it it'll say, oh, from so-and-so's Notion page or Slack thread, we decided to add this new section to the company documents. We added it yesterday, but it hasn't shown up in our table of contents yet. I picked up on this, and I'm suggesting that we update it. Here's the difference, and then I can approve that. Your second question was, how do we let lots and lots of people work on it? So the whole idea of this GitHub-based workflow is that you can have like 10 pull requests, right? An agent can sort of propose like dozens and dozens of changes. Now, that might be a little bit overwhelming. Maybe you don't want to go that far, but at the end of the day, like you can have required reviewers, you know, like the executive team of your company or the project lead, make sure that that change is aligned and approved, then they merge it in. And so you have an individual human that made sure that that change is legit, that it's good. And then if there's questions about it, you always know that there was someone who reviewed that. There was actually a gate, and that it's traceable and attributable to somebody. Yeah.
Take another one.
Thanks, that was great. I have 3 questions that I guess are all essentially one. First, you mentioned this whole thing was an exercise in figuring out what to put in GitHub and what in Notion. So I was curious if you could speak to kind of how the thought process evolved over that. The second was you mentioned that this idea of progressive disclosure was like core to your philosophy of how to set this up. And I was kind of also curious what other thoughts are kind of important in how you're architecting this, which to the third point, I'm curious what, once this is all fully set up and being used by people, that world looks like of humans and agents collaborating inside of ZeroSpace.
Yeah, so a lot of questions. So I think the first question was how I think about GitHub and Notion, or like how I arrived on that, or how I use it today.
You just had said that this whole thing was an exercise in figuring out what to put in GitHub versus Notion. Yeah. So I was curious how you had thought about that and what sort of this experiment had changed in your original conception of how that was going to work.
Yeah. So my sort of starting point was that Notion's actually not that friendly for agents, and they've sort of gated access to agents to their own Notion agent that you have to pay like an exorbitant amount of money for. And so I wasn't very satisfied with that. And also using the Notion API is kind of clunky, right? In Notion, you can't just like take a document and then shove that all into an agent's context. Like Notion works in blocks, which is kind of baffling to me. Like it's not just text, it's like, you know, let me actually try to go to like a real document here. Like each of these things is like a block. And when an agent is working with Notion, it can only pull like a few blocks at a time. So it actually takes multiple turns to get this full document. Now, what I actually really wanted to do at the beginning was Obsidian. I use Obsidian for my personal agent. It's basically just markdown files, text files that live on your computer that can be synced to remote vaults. It can be synced to your headless instance of Hermes running in Virginia. Like it can be taken wherever. Now, the big issue with Obsidian is that it doesn't really have access controls. It doesn't really have permissions so that like something that's sensitive customer data or like sensitive financial data, you don't really have a way to bar, you know, a contractor on your company from seeing that, right? So when anyone onboards onto an Obsidian workspace, they see everything. Now Notion, for all its flaws, has really good permissions and role-based access control. And so I thought like, okay, like if we want to be, you know, serving these like film studios and like working with sensitive IP, we can't just be throwing all our stuff on Obsidian as much as I would like to. For my own personal stuff, it's and only I see it, or only like, you know, select people I invite. Like, okay, like I don't really care. I'll just give them access to that. But I need a solution that's more enterprise friendly. And so I sort of landed on GitHub after I had that realization. Like GitHub, it's just a repository. It can hold code, but it can also hold text files. And so I figured, all right, like GitHub has actually really good access control where I can prevent certain people from seeing certain repos that are sensitive. So let me try it that way. And it also has really good ways to review things before you approve them. Notion doesn't have that. Like an agent can just like go in and delete all your Notion workspace, and you'd still have version history so you could restore it, but that's kind of annoying. And you also like, it's a lot harder to know like when something changed and why. Whereas in GitHub, like you're working with code, you know, these power the production systems that make up our world today. Like it has really good ways to review a change and then comment on that change and test that change and make sure that like everyone's aligned and there are certain people that have to sign off before it gets integrated. And so I was like, okay, let's try that. And so that's why I landed on GitHub at the end of the day. I hope that answered most of your points.
I think it did. Maybe the one part that was left out was the idea of once this is all set up and being used by people other than yourself, what the difference would be in terms of what it means to be part of a person running this place or just working here.
Yeah, so human agent collaboration, really, really important. Okay, so I think this actually segues well into a live demo. So I've been recording the last couple questions in my granola here. I'm going to pause that. I'm going to generate some notes. And so you can think of this as like any meeting I would have with my colleagues, right? So we've discussed a bunch of ideas. You know, we have some stuff on the drawing board. Now I have my AI note taker. We all use AI note takers. It seems pretty standard in 2026. So the granola is just what I happen to use. All right, now I have some AI generated notes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and save that in my Notion. This has nothing to do with AI. This is just a really boring web integration that just takes my Notion notes, or sorry, my granola notes and puts them into Notion. I'll go into Notion here. I have a new live notes right here. And then I can link this and I can tell Hermes, which is, I've set up Hermes on my Slack, so I can talk to it from any channel or from a select number of approved channels, but I can also start new chats directly with it in case I don't want other people to be seeing my messy workspace or my unformed thoughts. And I can say, hey, look at these notes and tell me what you think and propose a GitHub PR to ZeroGen OS repo with any learnings. So I doubt that it's going to come up with any useful information because the last two questions weren't that relevant. But for the sake of this exercise, say that this was an actual discussion I had with my teammates. I'm giving Hermes access to it. Hermes can read. Hermes already has company knowledge in it, so it's able to sort of synthesize this new information and it gave me a proposal on what we should do next, contingent on what we discussed in this meeting. All right, so I'll just let it run. Let me also pull a cooking show move and show you something that I've already done. So I am going to a conference next week. It's called AI on the Lot. It's basically a AI and media production conference, and I want to have a strategy for how I go about this conference, right? Who should I talk to? What sessions should I go to? What's relevant? So I asked it, all right, let's go way up here. Give me a one-sentence overview of the ZeroGen Notion. So I was just loading in the context already that it has. Now, ultimately, this shouldn't be Notion, so ignore that part. This is just me like doing things before I landed on that. Okay, it's like ZeroGen is XYZ. It does like all kinds of generative production stuff using AI and using context management and agents. Whatever, you can ask me about that later. And then actually, I told it to run for a couple conferences, Artist in the Machine, as well as AI on the Lot, okay? So I asked it, hey, like, look at this, create a website for me so I can better understand my strategy. It went through, it looked at the link for the conference, which is AI on the Lot here. It has this, it has a bunch of speaker information, like whatever. I don't know who these people are. I wanted to tell me who I should talk to. And then it came up with this website. Boom. So based on my company context, it searched the web for information about this conference and gave me a very organized layout of the sessions I should go to, the people there that are going to be most valuable, and a play-by-play schedule of the sessions, right? Super trivial for agents to do. It's just, and also really annoying for humans to do. It's just reading a bunch of information, and it's perfect thing to automate. And so I just made it really easy for myself to ask Hermes to build that for me. All right, let's go back to our live chat here. Okay, it read through. So as you can see, my Hermes has a bunch of skills that I've sort of curated over time. It has a Notion skill, it has a GitHub PR workflow skill. These actually kind of come included, like they're sort of included in the box with Hermes. But the Composio integrations is a new skill that I came up with after I connected to Composio, and then at first I didn't really know what it was, so I was like, use this a few times, how do you use it? All right, now make me a skill so that you don't have to go through that same sort of questioning and trial and error process next time. And it's been working great. Okay, so based on the live notes that I just took in this presentation, it opened a PR. It agrees with me. And it also sort of underscores what I was talking about, which makes sense, because that's literally all I gave it. Let's look at this PR. Now, this is all just throwaway stuff, so I'm probably going to delete this. All right, it's repeating a bunch of stuff that we already know, but then I could be like, okay, you know, let's say, let's rethink this decision and think and consider where Notion could come in here. I'm going to tag the agent because I set it up on my GitHub workspace, start a review, submit this, say, look at these suggestions. All right, so this is just my reaction to it. I'm going to submit this review. And, oh, I actually, this is kind of funny, but I thought I was logging into my own personal GitHub, but I'm logged in as my Hermes agent. So it's going to be really interesting to see what it does because it's technically just talking to itself. But, you know, it's going to take a second, so I'll just go to a different one. This is sort of what I was doing before, what I was showing you. So it's establishing, this is like my V1. All right, my Hermes agent suggested all this stuff. And then let's see here. I requested a bunch of changes. I was like, you need to define what this term means. This seems redundant. I actually disagree with you on this. Blah, blah, blah. All right, a bunch of changes. I basically tore it apart. And then I said, review my comments and propose updates. So it took all that information. It cleaned up some stuff. Mostly it was just removing things that I didn't want or that I didn't think was needed at this time or that was just straight up redundant. And then it came back to me with a summary of what it did. And then I went back and reviewed it more and added more thoughts. And then it was sort of this like back and forth. And it's at a point now where I'm happy with it as one human in the loop. I kicked it off to my colleagues to get their thoughts. And so if they agree, then this will get merged into the repository. This is now the default context layer for all the agents in the company. There's also the default context for all the humans in the company because it's going to be the same context, right? Cool. I think I'm just going to wrap it here because it's really late, and I really appreciate you all staying and being interested in what I have to say.
Everybody give him a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Shui Long. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and thank you so much for your patience as we present as much as we possibly can to you. That's pretty much it. I'm not a good MC. I'm going to let him take it from here. Oh, yeah. We're going to be going after this. We're all going to be going to a bar that's, what is it called?
Freeze Brewery.
Freeze Brewery. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's around the corner. I don't think we have this space for much longer, so everyone's going to leave, and we could all just walk together. Whoever wants to stay and chat a little bit more.
Cool. And if you want to be in the loop on more events at ZeroSpace, luma.com/ZeroSpace. Thank you guys so much for coming. It's great having you here, as always, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.